Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Bubblehead Fantasy Football Podcast. So we have a jam-packed episode today, more weekly reactions for the NFL. And immediately following this, you guys can check out our channel. We're going to be doing a buy and sell video. So, look forward to that. Let us know if you guys have any specific questions for buy and sell, or not buy and sell, sorry, start sit. And we're going to be doing that. That's going to be kind of a weekly thing that we do right after the episode. So look forward to seeing that and see what you guys think about that. So co-host Erik, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Excited to get into another week of football. How about you?
Yeah, it was another good week. A lot of storylines still, not much in college side, but NFL still has a lot of pretty good storylines. So definitely some stuff to talk about there. You ready to just jump on in?
Yeah, let's get it going.
Yeah, so first things first, just talking about college, right? So there's a few really big running back names that we're going to talk about. Raheem Sanders, Nick Singleton, and Sean Tucker, right? These are especially three of the big rising stars at running back for each of the next three drafts, really. So, Erik, you want to go ahead and start talking about some of those guys?
So yeah, starting with Raheem Sanders, who I like to call Red Rocket 2.0, playing over there at the Arkansas Razorbacks. So I think Raheem is a really good example of how you don't need to see a freshman smash, right? Compare what Braylon Allen and Raheem Sanders did last year, right? Obviously, Braylon Allen had a much better year. But, right, the recruitment profile of Raheem Sanders was much better. We saw Sanders perform very well, and now we're seeing it. I mean, Braylon Allen was like knocking on the door tier 1 for me going into the season, and he hasn't done anything to come down from that. But there's been a couple of running backs that have just risen, and I'm wondering, do I need to bump Raheem Sanders over Braylon Allen? That's really where I'm at.
Yeah, so I mean, I think this is the same conversation that we have for rookies in the NFL, right? It takes time to develop into a new level of competition, right? It's like from the jump from high school to college is just as big as the jump from college to the NFL, right? Each level has a jump, and you see the development that has to take place for these guys to, reach that potential. And then also too, they've got guys in front of them, right? So they have to beat out the guys in front of them in their program for them to start. So, and that's not going to happen, in one spring for most college programs. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you completely. For me, Nick Singleton and Sean Tucker, Nick Singleton was the bona fide, he was the same tier, as Devery Henderson, or not Devery Henderson, but Henderson from Ohio State, Trevion, sorry. He's the same type of prospect in terms of elite 5-star prospect that everybody has high expectations for coming into the year. And, Nick Singleton's done nothing to really say that that's not the case. For Sean Tucker, I think he's kind of a surprise. He's kind of jumped into maybe round 2 conversations.
Yeah, just one last thing about Sanders is we're going to see Sanders go up against Texas A&M, and although Texas A&M's offense has been a mess, they have legit NFL talent, on that front seven. So if Raheem Sanders can, take care of them, to the moon, he's already gone up my my rankings a lot. Meanwhile, Singleton, I mean, please give this kid the ball more. Like, holy shit, he's averaging something absurd. He's averaging 11 yards a carry. He's only getting 10 touches a game. I mean, he's got 4 touchdowns in 3 games. He's amazing. We haven't seen any usage in the passing game, but I'm not really worried, right? This is a true freshman, right? They're just adjusting. The fact that we're seeing it so fast, I'm thrilled. Tucker, I'm going to pour a little cold water on Tucker, honestly. I really see Sean Tucker as a day 3 player, right? 1, Syracuse. They don't have a track record. They really don't. But hey, they just played Purdue last week, and he got the volume still because, of course, he's going to get the volume. He had 18 carries and he had 2 receptions, so right, that 20 touches, but he was only able to turn that into 65 yards. I want to see testing numbers, right? If he goes in physically, right, as an athlete, crushes the combine and looks like a really athletic, a good raw athletic score, I'll start to bring him up a little bit. But right now, I think we're looking at a 4th-round pick at best because I just, and what does that really mean for you in Dynasty?
Well, I mean, yeah, if he's a third day pick, you should really not have much interest at all, and especially in this deep of a class, like I don't really see the need to reach on him. But the thing is, right, for the Devy side, right, you probably got Sean Tucker for fairly cheap. Because a lot of people weren't really that high on him coming into the league or to the year, in terms of like, I mean, I thought he was kind of an undrafted free agent kind of player, maybe a little bit higher than that, but I wasn't like in love with him by any means. And I think he's shown more than that. I don't know. Like, I don't have him as a day 2 or as a 2nd round pick. I have him as like a late 3rd right now, but that's still valuable for the NFL in terms of like if you get drafted in the 3rd round, that's very interesting still, so I think obviously it depends on how he performs at the Senior Bowl or in the combine. I think those are kind of important. So the next couple guys here on the list is Dane Key, Cedric Tillman, and then Jacob Cowing. So Cedric Tillman coming out of Tennessee, he's a really solid wide receiver. He had a lot more C2C looks for a lot of people coming into the season, but he looks like he could be a legit NFL wide receiver. Now, does that mean he's going to be a 1st-round pick, 2nd-round pick? Probably not. Probably 3rd-round pick, 4th-round pick. But what do you think?
I think you're spot on. I'm seeing 3rd round, probably. I think 3rd round's legit, right? 4th round maybe. If testing numbers aren't so good, 5th round. If testing numbers are amazing, might be able to push into the 2nd round. I mean, Velus Jones Jr., same team, very similar prospect. We're talking about a big, fast, older player that, they're very similar. So, and Felix Jones went in the 3rd round, right? So Cedric Tillman, he was eligible for 2021 NFL draft, right? So that's a big knock for me, the fact that he's, so much older. But Tillman's shown some legit, he's averaging whatever over 80 yards a game, and that's with this last game against Akron where they barely needed Tillman to do anything to win. He only had 16 yards. He's been dynamic so far, and that Hendon Hooker connection is very good. I expect him to put up great numbers. I think the key to any NFL stock, draft capital wise, will be, does he really smash the athletic testing numbers? Tillman's a guy I'm looking to sell after a great combine, and that's kind of like my best case scenario, to be honest.
Yeah, or get a kind of a Velus Jones type rise after the draft, right? Because Velus Jones got drafted so high, I think a lot of people just bumped him up their draft board. So that's something possible too. So what about Dane Key and Jacob Cowing? What do you want to talk about there?
Well, I'm going to go on to Dane Key. Dane Key was kind of the forgotten freshman at Kentucky. Everyone was so excited about Barryon Brown. Barryon Brown's looked good, but he's looked like a freshman. Dane Key arguably is the best freshman wide receiver in the country through 3 weeks. I mean, this kid's got a touchdown every game. And don't forget, this isn't in your, the like West Coast air raid offense that just throws the ball all the time, right? Will Levis really isn't throwing the ball more than 30, 35 times a game. It's a relatively balanced attack. And he's got over 70 yards a game. He's got a touchdown each game. His targets are a little low, but this past game, he got those 6 receptions, so that's good. He was a little touchdown dependent, but really for me, this is a player that you're getting late in your rookie drafts. I mean, he was ranked in the 30s probably at wide receiver this year by many people, maybe a little higher, maybe in the 20s. That's probably more realistic. But I know I grabbed Dan Key pretty late in my drafts, and I'm thrilled. I mean, we'll see what happens. Obviously, it's very likely Will Levis moves on next year, and then QB is going to be a pretty big question mark at Kentucky. But I like what Kentucky's doing. Bob Stoops has done a great job there in the last few years, and Denke looks legit. So, stock on the rise.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. You still want to see more. Obviously, he's a freshman, right? But the stock's on the rise, right? Like people are going to start investing more into Denke, and you could, it's going to be expensive to acquire him if you're looking to acquire him. So what about Jacob Cowing?
So Cowing was one of the top transfers for me in the country. He played at UTEP for 3 years, 2 years. Was it 2 or 3?
I think it was 3. Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
I can't recall, but anyways, he played for UTEP for a few years. He was very good at UTEP, but he transferred to Arizona. This is a whole another level of play, and he's crushed it this year. I mean, we got 5 touchdowns, 250 yards. He's averaging 7 catches a game. Honestly, I'm so impressed, right? I said Kentucky's doing great things. I think Arizona might be the next Kentucky. Like, this is kind of year one of them really turning around. They've had a great recruiting class. They've brought in a couple of good transfers. I really think, in general, the stock is up for Arizona. But I think Jacob Cowing is a very interesting player who, if we can see some solid athletic numbers, could definitely push for day 2 draft capital in the NFL draft this year.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that completely. I think you're right in terms of just what how much he's like kind of increased his level. He's a legit draft prospect now. So, but moving on to the NFL, right? So let's just go straight into the most important position in the NFL. Not necessarily the most important position in fantasy, but depending on if you're playing Superflex or not. But NFL quarterbacks, right? Do you buy Carson Wentz yard total right now? Do you think that's like something that is maintainable?
So Wentz had 650 yards through 2 games. He's had 313 and 337. So, right, he's been consistent, not like Tua, who had 2 very different games. But I think that is higher than we're going to get, right? That's 325 yards a game. Like, I'm not going to do public math right now, but that is a very, very good season. If he's averaging over that, that's an over 5,000 yard season, by the way. So no, I don't think it's going to continue quite on this pace, but right. The real thing is what it took to acquire Wentz. I mean, what is he? He's QB4 right now. He's just ahead of Tua. He's QB4. So what this is to me is perfect scenario to, one, potentially sell super high, right? Maybe someone's buying and saying, hey, he's going to push for QB7, QB6 on the year. I don't think that's realistic. I think more what we're looking at is QB, 10 to 16. But he's got good weapons, and I mean, they're kind of a crappy team, so yeah, I think he's going to throw a lot, and he'll have bonehead moves. He's already thrown 3 interceptions, but he's got 7 touchdowns. So, he's going to be a solid fantasy asset, at least in Superflex leagues.
So the thing is with Carson Wentz, and this is kind of unexpected for a lot of people, I feel like, that, the Commanders are not actually that great of a defense without Chase Young. Right, Chase Young is a very, 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 very important part of their defense, and their defense has been pretty atrocious so far this season, comparatively to what I think the expectations probably were going into the season, especially. So Carson Wentz is probably going to throw the ball a lot, and they're probably going to be losing a lot of games. So, I think that's good for Carson Wentz just because, right, he's going to throw the ball a lot, in my opinion. The game script will probably be beneficial for Carson Wentz. What do you kind of think about that?
I totally agree. I really do. I think that There's 17 games. I would expect 10 games to be QB1 sorry, not 10 QB1 games. I'm going to say, 6 QB1 games and another 4, top 18 QB games. And then he's going to give you a couple like, QB 25, QB 28 game. Like he's going to really stick a few games. Here we just got a chat right here. Would you start Wentz or Russell? Come on, like Russell. We haven't seen Russell at the Russ fantasy level since pre-finger injury last year. He really didn't look good after he came back, and he's looked terrible through 2 weeks. Can that change? Yes, of course it can.
I'm starting Wentz over Russell until
Wilson proves it. I say that, but then I'm like, wait a minute. He's coming back to Philly. And Carson Wentz is similar to Kirk, where it's like when the mental game gets in there, he's going to just fold. Just like we saw last week with Kirk on primetime. Everyone knows Kirk sucks at primetime. If you started him, I feel bad for you. And that's what worries me about Wentz. Man, that's harder. But, I mean, what is Russell? Like probably QB 15, QB 17 or something through 2 games, where Wentz is QB 4. You've got Judy banged up. I think I'm just going to go with Wentz. It's going to be a tough decision.
I think the thing is with Wilson is we still don't know what he's going to do, right? He hasn't shown really the offense hasn't been good at all, and I just don't see it yet. I don't see it yet. So I'm sitting Russell until I see something better on the field. Period. I don't care who it's over. I'm sitting him right now. I mean, I guess that's not who, depends on the person, right? But for most cases, I'm going to sit Russell. So, but moving on to Tua, right? So Tua is probably the biggest star from week 2, by far. I don't think this is maintainable, but at the same time, I do think Tua is a much better quarterback than he was last year. And I think that, he's kind of starting to come back from the injury. And then also the weapons are significantly better. They have the speed of Tyreek Hill. They have, Jalen Waddle, right? Buy Tua as a quarterback right now. Now he is kind of expensive now, so it's going to be tough to buy him. But, where are you putting Tua in terms of your long-term rankings now?
So that is a really great, you say buy Tua, and really my question was like, all right, but for how much? Because all of a sudden, I mean, most people that have Tua rostered are those that were like, I'm drafting Tua at 1.02.
It's Tua-anon. It's Tua-anon, right? The group that's that's like all about Tua. It's like a big Twitter thing, right?
That's how it is with these players. CEH, is similar. These players that were really hyped up and then their value crashed. And then all of a sudden you're like seeing these signs of life. It's like, all right, you got to pay pre-crash prices. It's like, but there was the crash. So I agree. The fact that, right, I think this is a really good, lesson for like being a GM in the NFL. You have a young quarterback, surround them with weapons, playmakers, protection, play calling. All right. I'm going to reference this a lot. Move the Sticks podcast with Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks. They're fantastic. They're former scouts. They both work with NFL Network now. And that's their big thing is around young quarterbacks, playmakers, play calling, protection. They got playmakers. My God. I mean, they arguably are the 2 most dangerous wide receiver tandem in the league. Maybe not the top of the top, but they're right up there. I mean, the speed and talent they have is crazy. This is the first time I've seen Tua look like Alabama Tua, where he's just hitting receivers and they're just making the plays, But the question is, how high am I ranking him? He is borderline QB1 for me in Dynasty. I'm not jumping him way up there. He's QB5 through 2 weeks, but I still want Trevor Lawrence over him.
He's a quarterback 1, not the quarterback 1.
He's borderline a quarterback 1.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm going to still put Dak above him. I'm still going to put Burrow above him. I'm going to put Jalen Hurts above him. He's later on our list. I actually been very impressed with Hurts. The big question for me is our question there: Russell over Wentz, Russell over Tua. Right? If I'm doing a startup draft right now, Matt Stafford, Russell Wilson, Tua. What order should they be taken in? That one's tough for me. Obviously, Tua has the best long-term future. So, I'm going to say, I haven't done re-rankings for a while, but I'm going to put him right at like, QB 13, like just knocking on the door of QB 1.
So our thoughts on dropping Devontae Smith or Amari Cooper for Treylon Burks. So let's start with you, Eric. What do you think about Treylon Burks, and what do you think about this?
Well, I'm assuming this is a redraft scenario. If that's the case, Burks is the third player for me. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm very excited about the way Burks has performed when we've seen him on the field. He doesn't have a lot of actual routes run. One, they got blown out so bad that a lot of the starters sat, this past week. But I'm pretty sure he has the most yards per route run out of all rookie wide receivers. If not, he's right up there. And I mean, we have 3 top 15 fantasy wide receivers that are rookies, so that's saying a lot. But the thing is first of all, Cooper is the wide receiver 1 on their team, and Treylon Burks might become it, but Amari Cooper is there's no doubt. There's still Robert Woods, and not to mention, well, all right, Philly and Tennessee are both, run heavy, but I think Philly's going to be a little more than they are. I don't know. The thing is with Tennessee, they're a sinking ship. Like we're going to see, I believe we're going to see Malik play significant, amount this year because I think they're bottoming out. I think they're going to have a top 10 pick in the draft. So, I mean, I guess the upside would be Burks, right?
So I would say, just for me, right, I keep both of Devontae and Cooper. I'm keeping Amari Cooper for the playoffs, and then I'm keeping Devontae for games in which the Eagles play elite corner matchups, and A.J. Brown is shadowed by the elite corner. Because if you think about it like this, right, Devontae Smith, whenever they play against an elite corner, A.J. Brown's going to get that coverage, I would assume, every game, right? So then Devontae Smith is going to now be the primary option in a team that really like is better when they throw the ball. Like Jalen Hurts has improved a lot. We'll kind of touch on that in a little bit. But so I really like Devontae Smith as a bench option. I think he's a solid stash with upside. And then Amari Cooper, he's the guy you want to stash on your bench for the playoffs. I would not start Amari Cooper at all, really, unless you're desperate because of injuries or something. But my thing with Treylon Burks, right? I think he's in the same situation that Rashad Bateman was last year. That you kind of see with a lot of young wide receivers, because it's not normal for guys to be like kind of Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson and explode year one. So I think Treylon Burks is somebody that you're looking to really. I wouldn't say he's not rosterable in redraft because he's absolutely is. I'd be hesitant to draft somebody that I believe is more likely to play a volume role this year.
Yeah, if you're just convinced that you're going to drop one of them, drop Devonta Smith, in my opinion. Amari Cooper has a much higher ceiling.
Yeah, I agree with that. So to Jimmy and Jalen Hurts, right? So Jimmy, we talked about this last week with Trey Lance, right? When was there a situation where Jimmy would be available or would he be the starter? Well, Trey Lance gets hurt the week after in the first quarter. Terrible injury, right? He's out for the year. So for me, Jimmy G, he's still not a great fantasy asset. He's a decent asset, as like a super flex asset, but for redraft, most situations you're probably not really worth acquiring Jimmy G for non-super flex.
Yeah, just to start off, hey, I gotta feel really bad for Trey Lance, right? Terrible injury. This is horrible, right? Obviously, going to affect his career significantly. In terms of Jimmy G, I think you're totally right. At best, we're looking at a QB2. I think his best 2 seasons are QB14, QB17. I could see that happening. For the rest of the year at points per game, he could be a top half QB2, which in Superflex is useful. Outside of that, not really useful at all. The thing for me that I'm really interested in, one, is what happens in 2023 at the QB position in San Fran. I'm assuming that Jimmy G is going to walk and they're just going to roll with Trey Lance. And then two, how does this affect the pass catching weapons in San Francisco? I think this is a benefit to all of them: Ayuk, Debo, and Kittle.
Yeah, I think it is too, right? Because you see less rushing touchdowns taken. That helps Debo's value in the red zone because he's really good in the red zone as a runner. It helps Ayuk and it helps Debo in receiving, and then also helps Kittle in receiving, I think. Because my thing with Trey Lance, right, is he's really good with deep accuracy, but he's not necessarily great with short and medium mid. So that's kind of my thought process there. Did you want to go ahead and move to Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, I got to say, we both were kind of haters of Jalen Hurts over the offseason. Are you still doubting him, or have you finally come around to the Alabama-Oklahoma quarterback?
Well, my thing was never fantasy. I always thought just, he needs to improve his decision making and kind of stuff like that, right? And I think I'm fully around. I will say though that this goes back to your point earlier, with Tua, right? Weapons for young quarterbacks, right? Same situation here. They get AJ Brown, and suddenly the offense levels up, right? Why? Because they got a number one receiver now, right? They got somebody who is a legitimate receiving weapon every single snap, and that requires the defense's attention. That is why this offense is leveled up. That's why Jalen Hurts is leveled up, and I think that's why he's here to stay for this year, especially.
I'm sold. I'm all in. I'm done doubting Jalen Hurts. Coming out, everyone doubted Jalen Hurts' ability to throw the football. No one doubted the football character, the leadership ability, or the playmaking ability with the legs. I have seen enough that Jalen Hurts has developed enough with his arm that he can be a legitimate NFL QB for a long time. I am so in on Jalen Hurts. For me, I'm just scrambling to be like, how high am I moving him up my dynasty rankings? He's up there. He really is. I think he's going to be tied to Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, AJ Brown, a good offensive line for 3, 4, 5 years. We're going to see a lot of top 5 finishes at at fantasy levels in the next few years.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of the top receiving cores in the NFL in a few years, right? As Devontae Smith improves and with AJ Brown being there long term, I think this will be a really good receiving core. Do you want to move on to running backs now?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so Derrick Henry. So all I want to say about Derrick Henry is it looks like the wheels are completely falling off of Tennessee's offense. The AJ Brown trade, it looked very questionable when it first happened. It is way more questionable now. What were they thinking, right? This team is a team that really, in all cases, was competing, or at least trying to. They don't have a passing game. The passing game is non-existent. They should give Treylon Burks more opportunity just because the offense is terrible, but it doesn't look like they're going to. Derrick Henry looks like a shell of himself. I don't have any interest in anybody in Tennessee right now.
I'm not quite the alarmist that you are projecting right there, to be honest. First of all, the returning Super Bowl champions the week before absolutely got embarrassed by the same Buffalo Bills team. Got embarrassed, just like Tennessee did. Okay,
and I'm not worried about the Buffalo Bills game. I'm more worried about the first game.
The first game, they nearly won, right? You know, the NFL is a close game, right? To have even a 10-point spread, you know, in the betting lines is super high. For example, that Buffalo Titans game that finished at a 10-point spread, you know, before kickoff. So to lose a 1-point game to, you know, a team that literally, I mean, they didn't have a turnover, and Saquon went off. Like, to me, that's not that bad. And and Henry, he got the touches. He had whatever it was. He had 80 something yards. His the first game. The issue is, like we've seen a lot, no catches. Right? He had no catches. He had no rushing touchdown. That's why he didn't have, you know, a good week one. Had he had, you know, a few catches, had he had a touchdown, we would have been looking at that week completely different from a fantasy asset or point of view. My worry is what you talked about, is that this offense looks broken. If they
Yeah, that's
cannot be at least a solid team, then Henry's in trouble. The reason Derrick Henry's been so useful in fantasy is that they are in a neutral game script most of the time, and he can get 25 rushes a game. And that he's averaged, before the season started, 55 touchdowns in his previous 55 NFL games. That's why he's been so good, is that he's been averaging close to 100 yards a game, and he's been averaging a touchdown a game. Right there alone is 16 points, right? Add in 1-2 catches. Now you're, you know, looking at 20-point games.
Yeah, the interesting thing with Derrick Henry was always the floor. But right now, it looks like that floor is very low because the offense is so bad. So I'll say this, right? Titans, I think that they made a mistake trading AJ Brown, and I think that's what's kind of showing up here. So let's say this, right? Derrick Henry, he's still going to start in your lineups every week, but I think you can kind of kiss the running back overall, or the running back one season. It looks like it might be over. I think you're looking at an RB2 right now.
So I just want to say, exactly 1 year ago in the NFL calendar, right after 2 weeks in the 2021 season, I'm taking this. I cannot remember it. I took it off of Twitter earlier, so I haven't verified it. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But Jonathan Taylor had 167 total yards and didn't have any touchdowns through 2 weeks. That's crap. That's actually pretty damn similar to what Derrick Henry's done so far. He's had 107, and he's had a touchdown. So it's actually literally the same amount. It's, you know, 16.7 points. Obviously, we know Jonathan Taylor is the number one running back in fantasy. So obviously, right, it's not a good start, but it's super early. Very few running backs that were drafted high or expected to do very well this season have actually done very well this season. So, you know, let's see what happens the next couple of weeks. And, you know, I think that's when we're going to know. After week 4, I think we're going to have a pretty good idea. As for A.J. Brown, the thing is they've got an old QB that's not that good, that has an enormous cap hit. They didn't want to go and add another $25, $30 million cap hit on a wide receiver. They reset. They get a young, promising receiver that probably won't be good as A.J. Brown, but might be. And the cost, the actual cash amount, I think is worth that trade. So I think what they did with that is they basically said, we need to reshuffle the decks. Let's hopefully make a playoff game and, you know, at least be competitive to keep our, you know, our ticket numbers up. But I think they realized they missed their window last year with Derrick Henry's injury, and they're saying, hey, it's time to reshuffle.
So I just want to bring up the question real quick. Would you start Terry McLaurin or Josh Jacobs on the flex spot?
So I'm going to take Josh Jacobs. One, I tend to lead more to running back, but the real thing is Terry McLaurin is going against Darius Slay in Philly, and Darius Slay is probably a top 5 cornerback in the league, and if he's not a top 5, he's a top 7. Darius Slay is probably going to be a Pro Bowler again this year, and McLaurin has not a lot of its success in his career so far against Slay straight up.
Yeah, so I'm going to go Josh Jacobs as well. You know, Darius Slay just locked down Justin Jefferson, so I have no faith in him and Terry McLaurin doing better. So it's Terry McLaurin's very touchdown dependent this week, in my opinion. So next question was on thoughts on Kamara. So I'm a Saints fan, so I'm gonna just go ahead and jump in here. Kamara is coming back this week. It looks like from the injury, so I think he's gonna be another start. See the thing with Kamara, right, is Jameis Winston does kind of not. He doesn't track the ball down as much as maybe people would like. He's gotten a lot better at that, so I think Kamara he's still going to be a running back one this week. And I think the Saints are going to try to get the offense going a little bit earlier this year or this week. They played a tough defense last week in Tampa Bay. I don't really read that much into that game. Those games against Tampa are always going to be. They've been defensive showdowns the last four games against Tampa. So I don't think it's too much to read into there. Yeah, he's going to get volume. So.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not worried about Kamara. I mean, New Orleans started off against Atlanta, against Tampa Bay. The NFC South, they're total rock fights. It's like a Big Ten West game, right? It's defensive, it's ugly, it's dirty, it's sometimes really dirty in the case of this past week.
I still can't believe Lattimore got ejected for that. But that's moving
guilty
on.
by association, man.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I'm not worried about Kamara. I still think we're going to see an RB1 season this year. He missed a couple games last year. He was still RB9. Not to mention he was playing with Trevor Siemian and the BYU tight end, whatever, Hill. For a lot of the season. Kamara is a superstar. I don't think he's lost it. I would be a little if we're talking DFS, I'm not playing him for a couple weeks until I see that rib is right. He missed last week with a rib. Guess what? Rib injuries are, that's important for running backs. So I'm not expecting immediate, stardom from Kamara, but he's such a good player. I'm not really worried about him. Like a bad season to me is like RB15.
Yeah. So let's go run through the running backs here real quick. The remainders on our list. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think he's worth mentioning here because his workload is exactly what we thought it was going to look like year one when he was getting drafted in the first overall spot in a lot of fantasy rookie drafts. Jeff Wilson, he's replaced Elijah Mitchell, and it looks like he's going to benefit a lot from Jimmy G's taking over for Trey Lance's injury. And Dalvin Cook, I think he's going to bounce back. And Aaron Jones looks like he's going to be a star. Do you disagree with anything on me there? You're muted there, Eric.
Thank you. Yeah, in general, I think you're right. Dalvin Cook, I will probably disagree the most, but it's like a slight disagreement. Right? Dalvin Cook, everyone said the reason that he was so bad last year is no touchdowns or, poor touchdown luck. He only had 6 rushing touchdowns last year. Well, guess what? He has no receiving or rushing this year. Minnesota kind of got blitzed, against Philly. So I don't take too much out of that game. He had a solid week 1. He had like 13.5 points or whatever week 1. I think that Dalvin Cook is more of the RB2 now. Wilson Jr., right? There's something wrong. There's some type of voodoo curse or something on San Fran's running back. For years, they've had just an incredibly high rate of injury, like serious injury at running back. Right? Not only is Elijah Mitchell out, now Tyron Davis-Price is out, 4+ weeks. Jeff Wilson Jr., he had, I believe it was 18 carries. He had 18 carries last week. He had a solid he had a 4.67 yards per carry. He's turned in 2 catches both weeks. He has a limited sample size of being the quote-unquote starter. He's probably like 7 or 8 games in the last 3 years, and he averages something like 17 or 18 points a game. Like, I think we're going to get great volume. He's going to be a good, chance to have a touchdown every week, and he's going to turn in 2 to 4 receptions. I think that he can be a really, really good third running back for you this year. And if you need to fill him in at number 2, you can get by. Aaron Jones, right? We're going to see this flip flop every week, right? Week 1, Quadzilla, AJ Dillon just crushed it, and Aaron Jones had a very average week. And then week 2, Aaron Jones crushed it. AJ Dillon had an average week. We're going to see this. I'm going to rank Aaron Jones above on a weekly basis, but that's because the ceiling is higher. We had 30-something points, 32 points from Aaron Jones. I believe Dillon had 24 in week 1. Right? That's an 8% or 8 point and a 33% increase. So Aaron Jones could be an RB1 this year. We'll see. And for CH, right, what we have seen so far through 2 weeks is hyper efficiency. He doesn't have a lot of touches. He's got a couple of receiving touchdowns. He had a really nice run to close out the game last week against the Chargers. He's got 7 catches on 7 targets, right? I want to see that number go up a little bit. But this is the thing. Once I heard the report about his gallbladder surgery in August last year, that really gave me an excuse for his sophomore season, right? He was sickly. His weight was way down. He looks good. He looks to be what we want him to be. I could see a top 15 season this season from Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
So what do you think about Hunt tonight? At the 20 mile per hour winds tonight, do you like Hunt?
So Hunt and Chubb are very similar to Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, which is interesting in some way because they're kind of flip-flopped, right? Aaron Jones is a better pass catcher, and he's the 1A, in my opinion, right? I know that LaFleur said they're 1A, but in my opinion, he's 1A to 1B of Dillon. Hunt, he's a very proficient pass catcher. So for me, it's what kind of options do you have? If you have Hunt on your roster, unless you're like in a dynasty league that's stacked, you should probably play him, especially tonight, right? Apparently there's 20-mile-an-hour winds. I don't think anyone's going to, suggest that Jacoby Brissett and Mitch Trubisky are like these superstar QBs. Talk about rock fights. AFC North is known for rock fights, especially this Cleveland with no Deshaun Watson and Pittsburgh with no Big Ben matchup. I think it's going to be defensive, run heavy, and basically whoever wins the turnover battle / Nick Chubb and Hunt versus Najee, those are 2 battles. Whoever wins those 2 battles, at least in aggregate, will win the game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like Hunt as a play. I think he's a good flex option for you. And if you're weak on running back this week, like if you want 0 running back strategy in the draft, Hunt's a starter this week for sure.
I think 10 points is the floor. 8-10 points is the floor. If he gets in the end zone, you're looking at the high teens.
Yeah. Yep. So moving on to wide receivers, right? So just kind of jumping through these real quick. Amon-Ra St. Brown, budding superstar, year 2. I was not on the Amon-Ra St. Brown bandwagon at the beginning of the season. I am now changing my mind. I think he's got a very intriguing career path. I think it's very similar to Stephon Diggs. So if you can get on that train early, I think that's good. And guess what? I think they're going to draft a quarterback next year in the draft. So I think that he's going to be getting a upgrade, a wide receiver or quarterback, excuse me. So I'm interested to see that. Christian Kirk, he's exactly what we thought he was going to be. He's going to get a lot of targets. He's going to get a lot of volume. And if he scores a touchdown, he's probably going to be a wide receiver 1 that week. If he doesn't, he's still going to be a solid floor play. Curtis Samuel's, I think, probably the biggest surprise. He was out most of the year last year. So a lot of people kind of forgot about him, it seems like, but he has a chance to be a pretty intriguing asset. You know, he's replaced. He is the replacement, or Jahan Dotson is Curtis Samuel's replacement, right? So until Curtis Samuel either is taken off the team or Jahan Dotson supplants his role, I think Curtis Samuel is going to be a pretty good option for you in fantasy for the short term. So Deontay Johnson, I actually don't want anybody from the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. I think one, Mitch Trubisky hasn't shown enough to for me to be terribly interested. And this week, I don't think it's going to be that great of an offensive game. So I'm sitting Deontay Johnson right now, but he's long term. He's going to be a pretty good option, I think. And then finally, Brandon Cooks. So Brandon Cooks, he had a tough wide receiver cornerback matchup last week. So I think last week was an aberration. Brandon Cooks is still going to be a really good asset. You know, he's going to have just because he had a bad week this week does not mean that he's going to have a bad season. And then for DJ Moore, answer that real quick. So DJ Moore is going to be shadowed by Marshawn Lattimore this week in all likelihood. So sit DJ Moore. And you know, the best case scenario with DJ Moore is you're going to play him next week. But I think DJ Moore is actually a really good option. Baker Mayfield seems to really like him. And so other than the fact that he was, you know, going to be covered by Marshawn Lattimore, I think he's a good option. For a trade, I think if you're not going to sell him this week, then you're looking at most likely having to wait until after week 4 because I think he's going to do pretty poorly this week. So, you know, I would probably wait till week 4 to try to trade him and then see what that value looks like then. But for me, I think you're trying to acquire either you're probably, I would try to get Garrett Wilson. Honestly, like I know I don't like wide receiver rookies and redraft all that often, but I think this is one situation where you could probably really benefit from getting Garrett Wilson because Garrett Wilson looks like he's going to be a star for the Jets. What do you kind of think?
So first of all, I just want to say, hey, thanks everyone for all the questions. We really love having the dialogue between our listeners and the podcast. DJ Moore, so it depends on the league. If we're talking redraft, I think DJ Moore is going to be, a solid QB 18. Sorry, wide receiver 18 to wide receiver 24, right? That back end wide receiver 2, like we've been seeing. I don't think we're going to get the unlocking of DJ Moore until later on, right? Don't forget how late Baker showed up to camp. And for a while, they were trying to play this, is it Baker, is it Sam Darnold game, okay? So give Baker some time. Baker is the best quarterback that DJ Moore has experienced, in my opinion, by far. And I'm not a huge Baker fan of that. If we're talking dynasty and we're looking to trade him, there are DJ Moore truthers out there. I'll tell you, I'm one of them. I still have him as a top 15, 18 dynasty wide receiver, right? If we're talking Garrett Wilson for DJ Moore straight up in dynasty, it's really hard, but I think I'm still going DJ Moore. I love Garrett Wilson, but there are people that really like DJ Moore out there. And those that really like him have seen him underproduce fantasy relative to what he should. So the fact that he hasn't been crushing it so far and probably will struggle against Marshawn Lattimore, to those people, it really won't be much of a deterrent.
Yeah, so what about the rest of the guys on the list here? Do you want to jump into your thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, so Amon-Ra St. Brown, I just have to start with I was wrong. I doubted it. I said I explained it away. Amon-Ra St. Brown was an absolute monster to end 2021 as a rookie. And I even liked the player a lot out of college, which really is the thing that pissed me off.
Well, I think we both said the same thing, right? TJ's Hawkinson's going to come back and a lot of those targets are going to go away.
Yeah.
And you know what's happened? They haven't gone away.
They have not
been to TJ. So
no, they haven't. I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown. So there were two things that really stood out to me. He had an interview sometime during Hard Knocks, and in about 23 seconds, he rattled off the 15 wide receivers drafted before him in the 2021 NFL draft. He said, this player, this school, this player, this school, this player, this school. And you could see it in his eyes. It was just like, it was an insult. It was an insult to him, and it drove him. Secondly, Adam Scheffner did an interview with Amon-Ra's father, John Brown, who was a two-time like all-world or Mr. World amateur bodybuilder and a one-time Mr. Universe amateur bodybuilder. So obviously quite the competitor himself. And he talked about how he raised these kids. If you didn't know, Amon-Ra has two brothers, both played in the NFL as wide receivers as well. So, right, quite the genetic stock there. And just the way he talked about training them, it reminded me of Earl Woods training Tiger Woods. The mental fortitude, the mental toughness. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is he feels the same way about his draft position the way Tom Brady did. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be the greatest player ever, the way Brady has come out to be, but he is just going to be a chip on his shoulder forever, no matter how many accolades he racks up. And I'm with you. Go get him. The price is high. Just go get him. He's a young wide receiver, and he's probably going to get tied to a very talented QB coming 2023. I think it's worth it. All right. As for Kirk, I'm with you. He's going to have great volume. If he can get any touchdown equity, he's going to probably be at wide receiver 1 in 2022. I see a very, very similar season to what Deontay Johnson had this year. Curtis Samuel's been amazing. I mean, we all left him for dead. He had that really good year. He was wide receiver 2. I think it was in 2019, maybe in 20. But it's kind of crazy that you have 3 producing wide receivers. I'm pretty sure McLaurin, Dotson, and Curtis Samuel are all wide receiver 2s right now. Samuel, based off the numbers, is the most safe out of them. He's got 20 targets. He's getting involved in the rushing game. I mean, this is exactly what we wanted to see out of Samuel coming out of Ohio State. Personally, if I can get, a solid offer, if anyone's giving me a first for him, I'm selling him. I don't think it's sustainable, but it's impressive. Deontay Johnson, on the other hand, right? You say you're not really into him. I'm excited about Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson's got 22 targets through 2 games. He's got 13
I said for week 3. Week 3, I'm not in on Deontay Johnson.
Oh, well, sure, yeah. I mean, he's probably going to be a wide receiver 2 or 3 in week 3. Season long, I mean, if Mitch Trubisky can improve, Kenny Pickett will come in and Kenny Pickett will be better, right? Like, we've seen the worst QB play we've seen on Deontay Johnson. So I think worst case scenario, we're talking a wide receiver 2C with Deontay Johnson. And if we get a little better improvement, right? The targets are still there. He's already on a rate to beat his 163 targets last year. Right? He was wide receiver 8 last year. And right, Ben wasn't anything special last year with that arm. So I'm still very excited. If you can go get Deontay Johnson on the cheap, do it. Brandon Cooks, I feel very similar. The targets have been there. Last week was a weird game, right? They blew out Indy. So, it makes sense that he wasn't going to, be super used. He still got 10 targets, but, you know what I mean? When you beat a team 24-0, your number 1 wide receiver, it's not ridiculous for them only to have 9.4 fantasy points. He hasn't gone in the end zone, and he's averaging 12.3 points per game. He's got 22 targets, 10 catches, just like Deontay Johnson. I'm very excited about what Brandon Cooks can do. I think if Mills can just get a little bit better, we've seen some moments, but we've seen some bad moments too. I think Brandon Cooks can be a top 15 wide receiver this year.
Yep, I agree with all that. And let's go ahead and move on to the tight ends here. So we got 3 to discuss. Obviously, the big name here is Kyle Pitts, right? Kyle Pitts. What has happened, right? What is going on in Atlanta? To be fair though, Drake London has exploded onto the scene. he showed this kind of target share in USC last year before he got hurt. And, for me, he was still, a top 2 pick in this year's, or top 2 receiver in this year's draft class for me. But I was saying, well, man, it was USC. Like, I don't know if that target share can't, bleed over into the NFL. Well, it looks like that target share is going to stay. He looks like he's going to be the guy from this year's draft class, and I think he probably looks like he should have been wide receiver or the first overall pick or maybe the second overall pick. That's what it looks like to me from the early returns here, because his quarterback play is only going to get better next year. In my opinion, I think this Atlanta team's probably going to finish in the bottom 5 of the league. So I think they're going to be able to get one of the quarterbacks here. And, but for Kyle Pitts, what are they doing with him, right? Why are they not utilizing him more? I want to know why they think that they're going to win games and not utilize Kyle Pitts. But one interesting thing that I saw, right? Kyle Pitts has had 50% of his receiving routes run being covered by cornerbacks. That's around the same percentage as Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson was at 55, right? If you're to put into perspective, Travis Kelce is at like 17 or 18%, right? Why is Kyle Pitts getting covered by corners so much? What are you doing with the formations to get Kyle Pitts better matchups in the receiving game, right? I think this is damning on Arthur Smith more than anything. But just to kind of briefly mention, Zach Ertz and Tyler Higbee, I think both are solid options. They haven't had a great start to the season, but I think both are going to pick it back up. What do you think about these guys?
So with Pitts, I'm starting to get worried about 2022. If you're in a redraft league and you took Pitts, you could be in trouble. I would recommend looking to see if you can get Tyler Higbee, looking you can get to see Logan Thomas, looking if you can get a good backup just in case things don't get better. They probably will. This player is 6'6", has amazing hands, and runs close to a 4.4. I mean, Kyle Pitts is amazing. What we saw as a rookie is not like that didn't just go away. Yes, Drake London's there, and Drake London, is going to be a target competitor, but right, it's going to get better. It has to get better. We're not going to have 19 yards a game, right? Week 1, we still got 7 targets, so that was nice. But I'm sitting Kyle Pitts in week 3. I need to see it before I'm going to trust it in my lineup. Zach Ertz and Tyler Higbee, I feel like you're kind of shortchanging them. I mean, they're sitting at tight end 5 and tight end 7 right now, and PPR tight end premium 1.75.
I think that has more to do with how bad the tight end position though is than
Yeah, I mean, other than Andrews and Kelce, there hasn't really been a lot of success from any of the the good players, or at least the ones we thought would be good.
I mean, even Pitts and Hawkinson, who were
supposed to be top 5, terrible, and
they're both been
Hawkinson's
terrible, right?
been very weak. But right, the targets are there. Higbee's got 20 targets, right? Week 1, a lot of people are crapping on him because he had a couple of drops and he just didn't look great. All right, well, he's got 20 targets, he's got 12 catches, he's got over 110 yards, no touchdowns, but right, he's averaging 16 points per game and 1.75 tight end premium leagues. Meanwhile, Ertz, this is what I was expecting. Like week 1, he was nursing an injury. He was coming off an injury. So he only managed 4 targets, but he grabbed the touchdown. And then in week 2, gets 11 targets, right? I think Zach Ertz could be a top 3 tight end in fantasy, especially if we're talking PPR, because I don't think he's going to be a huge red zone guy, but I think he could really rack up a lot of targets. So I'm very bullish on both of them. I think you can win a championship if they're your tight end 1. I think they can both be tight end 1s, and Ertz can be a high tight end
1. So I just wanted to kind of touch base on this question here real quick. So my team is lacking at running back. I have Hollywood Brown, Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore, Michael Pittman, Jamar Chase, and Chris Godwin stashed until healthy. Would you guys be able to recommend a trade package? So I actually like that this is a really good team in terms of wide receiver depth. Um, Hopefully you were able to get Jeff Wilson on the waiver wire this past 2 weeks ago, or I guess a week ago. Um, and what do you think, Eric? What are your trade packages that you're kind of throwing together?
Sorry, it's really helpful if you give us some league specifics, right? Is this a PPR league? Is this a dynasty league? Is this a start 8 league? Is this a start 11 league, right? That makes a big difference. But just super generic, my thought is first thing and the most obvious is sell Curtis Samuel for a running back. There's got to be someone that will give you a solid running back for a top 10 wide receiver through 2 weeks, right? I don't expect it to continue, and you probably aren't going to sell it at that rate, but there's going to be someone willing to give you definitely a Miles Sanders, maybe a Clyde Edwards-Helaire, maybe a Leonard Fournette, right? That's what I would be doing. Can I turn Curtis Samuel into CH or Leonard Fournette? That would be great. If that's too much, maybe pair them with a decent running back, say Nyheim Hines, maybe a little higher player like AJ Dillon, right? Can you go and upgrade to a really good player? Can you go AJ Dillon, Chris Samuel, and go and get a Javonte Williams if we're redraft? That would be interesting.
Yeah, so I'm looking at what are the lower tier options that have really good upside in terms of so the first name that comes to mind for me is James Robinson. If you can get James Robinson for fairly cheap, which a lot of people, I don't think a lot of people are really in on James Robinson still, and he's a very good like zero running back option to have, right? Because if you think about it, your team, right? Let's assume you can start, 3 wide receivers, right? You're starting Jamar Chase, you're starting Michael Pittman, and you're starting either Chris Godwin or Hollywood Brown.
Yeah, Godwin,
most likely Godwin if he's healthy. Yeah.
I mean, you're talking 3 wide receiver ones right there.
Yep, right. So you're looking at you just need a solid floor at running back. That's in my opinion, right? Getting guys with a high ceiling is great and all, but you just need a floor, right? So that's a perfect option there is James Robinson. And then another decent option is Darrell Henderson. I'm not a huge fan of Darrell Henderson, and I think the price is a little bit higher than what you should be willing to pay. Especially because he gets hurt a lot, but he's a solid option as well. And I agree with Eric. I'm trying to move Curtis Samuel and Hollywood Brown. Those are kind of my top 2, preferably Curtis Samuel. And then hopefully you have but that looks like the foundation of a championship, a potential championship team. But it is important though, if you're going to go with that team, right? You have to scour the waiver wire. Anytime there's a running back injury, you have to get the backup, right? Pay all your fab to get that guy, right? If you're playing with just a waiver wire order, put in the waiver and hope for the best, right? So.
Yeah, and that's a really good point about your fab. If you're playing in a fab league, really get aggressive, right? If you are needy at running back, when Jeff Wilson all of a sudden looks to be a potential RB2 for basically the whole fantasy football season, go and put 40, 50%. Go and put 60% of your fab in for him. Because if it works out, like that's your championship move. You know what I mean? Like those are the moves where you just got to be aggressive. Like don't just go put in this little amount and then have somebody grab them for depth. That you got to go for it when you have the opportunity.
Yeah, so I had Elijah Mitchell when he went down in one league, and I put $40 on 40 out of 100 on Jeff Wilson. Right, I'm only gonna have Jeff Wilson for what 6 weeks, 7 weeks. I think was
the projection.
Even more. Yeah, it could be more, right?
It could be more. But, I'm not kidding. It could be the whole fantasy season.
Yeah, I mean, but best case scenario, right? I have Elijah Mitchell back by like week 10 or 11, right? So I'm not even going to have Jeff Wilson for the full season. I just put almost half of my fab on him, right? But that's going to get me into the playoffs, right? So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of my thoughts there. Did you have anything else about the tight ends or?
No. What are we looking ahead for?
Yeah, so I'll start off here with mine, right? So I'll start with the NFL side here. So Bengals offense, Broncos offense. Bengals really have struggled so far this season, at least compared to expectations. There's a crazy number, right? That Joe Burrow has been sacked, but he has such a low EPA in terms of like adjusted sacks. Right, his adjusted sacks is actually very low, and he's actually produced. He's actually really bad at avoiding sacks, which is something that he definitely needs to work on. And the offensive line has been the worst in the league in terms of protection. I think this offensive line is going to get better, though. Right, this is a brand new offensive line. They signed like 3 people to the offensive line to replace their starters, so it's going to take them time to gel, and it's going to take the offensive line time to really become a cohesive unit. So I'm not worried there terribly yet. I think the Bengals offense is going to be a great offense come playoff time for fantasy football. The Broncos offense, I will say I'm almost completely off the board on the Broncos offense. I almost want not a single one of them. And I said that at the beginning of the season, and I'm saying it now. Except now I'm even questioning Russell Wilson. I thought Russell Wilson was going to be somebody to own this year because he had a lot of weapons. That doesn't look to be the case anymore. Nathaniel Hackett looks like he's a joke as a coach. I don't know. What do you think? Do you want any of these guys in fantasy right now?
So, in terms of Denver, I think that we're getting a little like ahead of our skis here. Denver is 8th in the league in total yardage. They're moving the ball. Their issue is efficiency. They're not getting in the end zone. They're making really boneheaded play calls in terms of the scoring opportunities, which I think we're all referencing the 64-yarder they took, where if you watch the Manning cast, please, if you're watching Monday Night Football, watch it on ESPN because the Manning brothers are phenomenal to watch. Peyton's over here going, timeout, 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 timeout. I think he said it something like 62 times in like 20 seconds. Like it was hilarious. But sorry. Anyways, right, like Denver is right, just like the offensive line in Cincy, got a lot of new pieces, right? Let's give them some time. Let's not get too excited. We got a new coach. We got a new system. We got a new quarterback. Let's give him a little bit of time.
A coach that looks completely out of his element, though.
Yes, but it's his first time head coaching. Like
that's not an excuse for being able to just have zero knowledge of how to like.
I disagree. I think that you need to do. What's my issue is he needs to recognize that's not his strength right now, and he needs to have a coordinator. He needs to hire a coordinator that's their strength and they can do it. That's where because as the head coach of the football team, you're a CEO. Like you don't need to be able to do this, this, and this. You just need to know that you can create a team that can. Okay, so that's where I'm going to really knock Hackett. But he's a first-time coach. I'm going to give him a little bit of a pass, at least for a few more weeks. If we just keep seeing it, keep going and going. Okay, I'm with you. I'm a little worried about the passing game with Denver, specifically Sutton and Judy. I'm not as worried about Russell, and I'm definitely not worried about Javonte. I'm a little worried about the 2 receivers. And Alberto, I'm quite worried about. As for the Bengals, you're totally right. The big issue is pass protection. Joe Burrow is going to get hurt again if they can't fix this pass protection. Even with all those messes, right? T. Higgins been fine. Joe Mixon's been fine. Obviously, Jamar's been fine. And hell, even Hayden Hurst has been solid. I mean, Joe Burrow is what? He's like QB 11 through 2 weeks, and he had 5 turnovers in week 1. Like, they're going to be fine in fantasy. The question is, are they going to win football games? And 2, is Joe Burrow going to make it through the season? That's my issue there.
Yeah. I wanted to say, too, about Hendon Hooker real quick before we jump into your guys. So I'm really looking forward to watching the Florida-Tennessee game this week. One, I want to see Hendon Hooker, and I also want to see Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson has had 2 subpar games in a row, really showing his inconsistency. Can he turn it around against a Tennessee team that is honestly surprisingly good? I'm really curious to see, who's the real contender here. Is there one even? You want to jump into your topics?
Well, I just want to talk about the Florida-Tennessee game, the battle of the SEC East. So, what you mean? What do you mean by contender? That's the real key for me. Are we talking a top 25 team? Or are we talking about an SEC East title?
We're talking about a team that could knock out Georgia, really.
No,
Can you knock
neither
off
are
Georgia?
contender. Neither are contender.
I don't think so either. But
I don't think either can get within 2 touchdowns.
I don't think so either. But I think you can at least make a conversation about if let's say Tennessee wins this game. I think you can at least put them. They're going to be in national conversations, right?
Yeah, they'll be a great media darling for sure.
Yep.
I agree. Honestly, whoever wins it will be. You're right. Anthony Richardson looked really bad through 2 weeks or the last 2 after a great week 1. But I think this is a good matchup because there's for Florida at least, they're very different teams. Florida is a run the ball, control you on defense, and we have a crazy weird talent at QB. I'm not going to say crazy amazing because we've seen a lot of bad, even with the good. They don't have pass catchers. Their pass catchers suck, right? So that hurts Anthony Richardson, a young, underdeveloped QB, a lot. Hendon Hooker is probably the 5th, 6th, 7th oldest starting QB out of all 131 FBS teams. Pretty sure he's already 24 years old. He might even be 25. Right? We already talked about Cedric Tillman. They have a very dynamic offense, but their issue is their defense is terrible. So my thought is that Florida actually matches up really well with them. Is this played at the Swamp? I didn't check. I wasn't sure.
It's at Tennessee.
So honestly, I'm thinking that this has got to be like a 3-point spread. This has got to be like a 2.5 point spread. And I'm going to lean Tennessee personally.
It's actually, pretty surprising, but Tennessee has a negative 10.5 for the spread.
Wow.
Right now.
Wow. That I am going to assume that gets bet down a little bit in the next few days. That is surprising. Now, like I did said, Florida, I think matches up well against Tennessee, so I'm not super shocked. I think this is a get-right game for Richardson, and if Hooker can look really good in this game, that's going to do a lot for me for a player that I've been dubious about all year in terms of NFL prospect.
Yeah. So, what do you think about what is your storylines that you want to talk about?
All right. Yeah, we'll wrap these up. Try and be quick here. We're a little bit over our time. So my big thing is anyone going to score on Buffalo? Like, are we talking about a 17-0 season? Until I see a team compete with Buffalo, week 6 is when Kansas City's playing them. And they play in Miami this week, who, looked really great last week, at least in the fourth quarter. Whatever the points are, I'm laying until that Kansas City game. I don't care. I don't care if it's 2 touchdowns. I will lay the points. Buffalo is so far away better than their competition. And guess who they played? The Super Bowl returning champs and the returning AFC champs regular season. So until I see someone compete with Buffalo, I'm going to just assume Buffalo is going to run over teams, at least until week 6 when they play Kansas City.
I actually think Miami might win this game.
I think Miami.
I don't think it's likely.
Complete fluke last.
I don't think it's likely, but I think it's possible. And the reason I say that it's possible is because I don't think that Buffalo is able to match up with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle.
I think that Leslie Frazier is going to be a much better defensive play caller than Baltimore. Mike McDonald, was a moron. Go watch the game and look how many times Tyreek Hill was one-on-one man coverage. You don't do that. Literally, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're Jalen Ramsey, it doesn't matter. You don't do that. He is too freaking dangerous.
He's too fast. There's not a single person that can cover him.
They rushed the ball 5 times in the fourth quarter on offense. They did everything that you needed to have done to blow a lead like that. Yes, was it impressive? It was. But there were, I don't know. This wasn't to me, this was on the realm of blow, choking that the 13 seconds was by Buffalo last year in the AFC Championship, or actually it was divisional round. But anyways, I think Buffalo has clearly put themselves at the top of the league. I want to see if anyone can compete with them. My next point is, hey, can someone slow down USC in the Pac-12? Right, the USC's just been blowing out these terrible teams. Oregon State's the first team on their schedule that it's like, hey, you know what? They might be pretty decent. Now, Oregon State hasn't been good for a while. They're 3-0. They've had, they had a decent win last week. I'm pretty sure it is up in Oregon, if I remember right.
Yep, pretty sure it is.
So, can someone slow down this USC offense? That being said, it's going to be USC's defense, not their offense, that limits their ceiling as a team this year.
I mean, to beat USC, you gotta score a lot of points. So, I mean, slowing them down as keeping them to 35, I think. So, but yeah, do you have anything else that you want to talk about here? Or?
No. I just want to say, because I know you're the big USC fan this year, I still think USC is going to be a 2-loss team.
I'm a Caleb Williams fan. I'm not a USC fan.
I know, but it's like by proxy.
Yeah.
But no, that's all I got. Do you want to mention anything before we close it out?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks, y'all. Thanks to all the listeners. Right, we really appreciate having you guys join us here, and appreciate you guys asking questions, and keep that coming. We try to do these streams every week. At 5:30 Eastern. So give us a follow on the channel, and we'll catch you back next week, and we'll let you guys know on the through the schedule, right, if we're changing that up. But yeah, looks like we're going to be continuing on this for a while. So really appreciate it though.
Yeah, thank you. Seriously, it was great to have all the questions. Look out. So, right, this is going to be our big episode where we're getting really in depth, and we're going to really dive into topics every week at 5:30. Please be on the lookout. We're looking to add a couple of much shorter stints per week. We're looking to do some buys and sells weekly, and then perhaps we might get into the sports betting, whether it's prop betting or actually doing spreads, money lines on games between college and the NFL. We're really excited. We're trying to expand the channel. Please smash that subscribe button, smash the like button, share, follow us on Twitter, interact with us on Twitter. The more we interact, I think the better the channel is going to be. Robert is really good again to do the episode. I'm excited to watch an AFC North, just total rock fight tonight.
Yep. And those short videos are going to be on our YouTube channel. Those won't be on the Twitch until I can figure out how to add those. I don't exactly know how to do that yet, but I'm trying to work on that. But they'll be on our YouTube channel in the meantime. So give us a follow there if you can. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.